Hi, everybody, and welcome to Rosalynn's webinar on Gamify Your Language Classroom. She will start here in a few minutes, but before she does, I would like to talk to you a little bit about the certificate program. My name is Edwige Simon, and I work for the Division of Continuing Education at the University of Colorado Boulder, and this is my program. The Certificate in Language Teaching with Technology is a 12 graduate credit program, and it's offered fully online, and we offer courses year-round. The minimal admission requirement is that you have a BA, and you can start at any time, and most students finish in 2 to 4 semesters, but you do have up to 3 years to complete the 12 credits and the 2 requirements. It doesn't matter if you're a novice or an advanced user of technology. The courses are built with differentiation in mind, and so you will be able to learn a lot from the courses regardless of how tech-savvy you are. I'm going to talk a little bit about the summer courses, but before I do, as far as the admission process goes, a certificate is not a master's program, it is not a degree, it is a credential. And so if you're interested in pursuing the certificate, all you need to do is register and start taking courses. If you only want to take one course, that's fine. You might only want to take, for example, the gaming course that we offer this summer. And maybe you want to take another course, but if at some point you realize, well, I've taken 8 credits, I might as well get the certificate. You don't have to apply, you don't have to retroactively apply. All the courses that you take will count towards the certificate, whether or not you decide to complete it. So I'm going to say a few things about the summer courses, but we still have one spring course open for registration. It starts March 30th, and it's LGTC 5040. It's this course here. And on this slider, at any point, if you want to have more information about a course, you can just click on it. And you'll get information about the course, who is teaching it. You can request a copy of the syllabus if you want. And so this course is about connecting your students with native speakers and answering all the questions that you might have. Is it safe? Where can I find a partner class? What kind of activities can I design for my students and their partners? What if things go wrong? So it is an 8-week course, and it starts March 30th. And the cost of the program is $495 per credit hour. So all the 2 credit hour courses are $990. So this is our last spring course. And then on Monday, our summer courses start. And so we have 4 courses this summer. We have a course on digital games and language learning. It is an 8-week course that starts June 22nd. It's a fully online course, and I will be teaching it. And then we also have the Language and Technology Foundation course. If you want to pursue the certificate, take this course. It's offered once per year, and it's a 10-week course. And we talk about technology integration models. We talk about differentiation. We talk about ADA compliance. We talk about all the different topics that you really need to know about if you're interested in really integrating technology in your classroom to enhance your students' learning outcomes. And I will be teaching this course as well. We also have a course on second language acquisition and teaching methods. It's an 8-week course. It starts June 2nd, and it is taught by Mark Knowles and Eric Ehrman. And this course, it's also, a 2 credit hour course. And it's a great course. It's a great refresher. If it's been a long time since you've taken a second language acquisition course, it's probably a good idea to consider this course. It's very discussion-based, and it's a great refresher. It talks about the second language acquisition theory in very practical terms. And then our last course is a 1 credit hour course for teachers who want to work on their own proficiency. So there are a lot of teachers who sometimes they're the only language teacher in their school, sometimes even in their district, or the only one teaching their language. And it can be difficult sometimes to maintain your proficiency. So in this course, you will discuss the challenges of maintaining proficiency with your classmates and discuss ideas and strategies, but also you will meet twice a week with a language partner to work on your conversation skills. So these are the 4 summer courses. You have all the information you need on the website, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. The last thing I want to point out is that we have some free professional development resources on the website. We have a library of webinars that you can consult at any time. You have recordings of all the presentations and the presenter slides. And we also have a book club. We read about 3 books a year, and right now we're reading Learning Transported. We just finished chapter 4. It is not too late to sign up and jump in. People are jumping in every day, and so the community is growing. We used to meet on a Facebook group, and we have migrated the book club to a self-enrolling Canvas course. If you sign up to join the book club, you will receive an email providing all the information that you need to get started with the book club. So that's it. I'm going to now unshare my screen and let Rosalynn present her webinar. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to my presentation. It's Gamifying Your Spanish Classroom. My name is Rosalynn Lucas. I teach at Midlothian Middle School in Midlothian, Virginia. I teach Spanish 1B and 2 to 7th and 8th graders. And I'm going to share with you today the project that I did for the for the Tools and Practice class that I took in the fall. And my project for that class was to create a hybrid breakout to introduce cultural information to my 8th grade students during our unit on celebrations. And so I wanted to introduce information to them about some winter Hispanic holiday traditions, and I decided to use a hybrid breakout to do that. Breakouts, just for some background information, sort of developed from the concept of escape rooms. And escape rooms are rooms where groups of people go, they get locked in a room for usually an hour, and they have to work together to solve puzzles and find clues to be able to break out of the room. And so that concept spread to education. And in 2015, James Sanders and Mark Hammonds started the BreakoutEDU platform, which is an immersive learning games platform, to sort of extend that escape room concept to classrooms. And the way they did that was to create these BreakoutEDU kits that allow for the facilitation of games where the players work together, use teamwork, critical thinking, problem solving to solve puzzles in order to open a locked box. And these are what the original boxes looked like. They might look different now. I haven't seen a new one recently. But these can be purchased from the BreakoutEDU website, or teachers can sort of build boxes themselves. They can be sourced through Amazon. Sometimes you can find things that you need from places like the dollar store. So you can build your own boxes if you don't want to purchase one from that particular site. And then digital BreakoutEDU became a thing. Justin Burkbickler and Mario Venturino started creating digital versions of these breakouts. And in 2016, in conjunction with the BreakoutEDU founders, they started digital BreakoutEDU. And so they were asked to sort of take on the digital aspect of building breakouts. And these games are based on the same principles as the BreakoutEDU kits, but they are played entirely online. So that's just a little bit of background about breakouts and how they developed. Digital breakouts are typically organized in Google Sites, although you can build them in Google Docs or Google Slides or any other product you want. And the locks are created in Google Forms. And if you're doing a digital breakout, the only physical component you need are the computers for your students. I have found, however, that it is helpful if my students have something to write on, so, you know, pencil and paper, or sometimes I'll give them whiteboards just so they can have something to write on. Sometimes as they are solving puzzles and gathering clues, it helps if they can write things down to remember them or to figure things out. So I found that something to write on is also helpful. So there are lots of great reasons to play breakouts in your classroom. one of the big ones is that it touches on all of the 21st century skills. So they're going to get collaboration and critical thinking and problem solving and communication as they work through the breakout. It also teaches them grit and perseverance. They are not going to get every clue the first time. They're going to have to go back and rethink and try to come up with new solutions. It increases student engagement. The kids typically really get into it and they enjoy doing this. It also gives them just a different way to interact with the subject material. And because breakouts, both physical and digital, are timed, traditionally the time is 45 minutes, although you can change that to meet your needs if you want to. But there is a time pressure to working with breakouts, and that just adds another component to the experience. So there are lots of wonderful benefits of doing breakouts with your students. Breakouts also incorporate Carl Kopp's game elements that make learning fun and engaging for students. Primarily things like uncertainty of outcome. It is almost guaranteed when you run a breakout that not everyone is going to break out in the time limit. And so you don't really know if you're going to be successful in this endeavor or not when you start it. It also has an element of challenge to it. Students have to really think about the solutions to some of these puzzles, and they have to look for different clues and look at things in a different way and go back and revisit things. And so it does challenge them. Visible signs of progress is another component. If your lock didn't open or you didn't have the right code, you know that you didn't get it. If the lock opened, you got a sign that you're on the right track. So there are lots of gaming components that also bring a level of engagement to the classroom if you're doing a breakout. I had done breakouts with my students before, but I had only ever done digital breakouts, and I had only ever done breakouts to review material. And so with this project, I wanted to try something a little bit different. And so I created a hybrid breakout. So there were both physical and digital components to this particular breakout. And I used it to introduce material as opposed to review material. So I created a breakout that had, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, that's right. That had 8 locks to it. 7 of them were digital. There was a color, a date, a directional lock, and there was a 6-letter, a 7-letter, an 8-letter, and a 2-word lock. In addition to the locks that were on the Google form, there was also a physical 4-digit number lock that was attached to a box that held some UV lights that the students were going to need to do some of the physical activities that I had incorporated into this breakout. If you are doing a digital breakout, the setup of your locks on the Google form is really important. And you're going to set it up just like you would do any Google form, but there are a couple of things that you need to be sure that you add when you're doing those. So when you go to your question on the Google form, you're going to click on those 3 little buttons in the bottom right corner, and you're going to use the description and the response validation features of Google Forms. We tend to use the description feature to give them any information they need about how they need to type in the clues. Typically in digital breakouts, you ask for them to do their clues in all caps. Sometimes you might want to give them a code as to how to put things in, or an order that things need to go, or any information that they need to be able to do that lock appropriately can go in the description part. The response validation is really important. You need to have your students see an error message if they do not put in the correct code. And that's going to be really important because sometimes students will have to go back and do a lock 2 or 3 times before they get it correct. And so you want them to be able to continue to work on it. If you do not put an error message in with the response validation feature, if a student starts to type something in and they hit enter, they're going to get a message that tells them that the entry must contain, and then it's going to give them whatever the clue is. And so you don't want them to have the clue. to open the lock until they've actually solved it on their own. So the response validation is going to be really important if you're creating digital locks on a Google form. So I built my breakout in a Google site, and we were doing celebrations and holiday traditions, and it just so happened that this year we got a big snowstorm in December. We don't usually get our snow that early, but we missed a week of school. And so there was a lot of discussion about whether people thought the school board was going to cut our vacation short since we'd missed so much school. So I kind of used that as part of the tie-in of my breakout. So if you can see the picture on the side there, the Google form and the links to all of the activities in the breakout are all there in the website. I had my students work in groups of 3. 3 is a really good number for this. You get, enough people to sort of bounce ideas off of each other, but they can all work on one computer. And I really like for them to work on one computer when they're working on this so that they are forced to collaborate and work as a team. I found that if they have more than one computer, they sort of try to divide and conquer and, I'll solve this puzzle and you solve that one. And so then you lose the teamwork and collaboration piece, which I think is really important for these. So I try to have them work on one computer. I do sort of a brief introduction to this. I give them the link to the Google site, and I tell them that they should look for things as they're going through the material, things that are like in different colors or different fonts, or things that are capitalized or larger than other things, so that they just have sort of an idea of kind of how to look for things. I don't give them a lot of instructions on what they have to do because I really want them to sort of figure it out. And for this one, I made it an hour because there was a lot of target language reading in this, and I thought it might take them a little bit longer. There were also 8 clues, and so that was kind of a lot. So they had an hour in which to solve it, and they had 8 activities that they needed to correctly complete in order to actually break out. So I'm going to walk you through the 8 activities that they worked on. So typically in a digital breakout, it doesn't matter where you start, which clue you start with. But in this particular one, I did need them to start with this clue first, and I did tell them that because this clue was going to unlock the box that had the UV lights in it that they would need for later clues, and I didn't want them to get to puzzles where they needed the lights and not have had them already. So I just had them start with this clue. So they got this Google Doc, and that's all that they saw. And there's a little arrow pointing to the rooster, so hopefully they knew to click on that. That took them to a site called jigsawplanet.com. Jigsaw Planet is a site that allows you to upload an image and turn it into a jigsaw puzzle. So when you go to the site, you can upload your image and you can decide how many pieces you want to be in your puzzle, whether you want it to be easy or hard. You can change the shape of your pieces. And then you put your image in and it will give you a link to your puzzle. And so then I just attached that link to the rooster. So when they clicked on it, it took them to Jigsaw Planet. This is what they saw when they got there. And they're able to, on their computers, drag the pieces around until they put the puzzle together. And when they finish the puzzle, they should see this. So they're going to read this information. Hopefully the word Misa stands out to them. It's in a different color and it's in all caps. And so that was their clue to take away from this part of it. And then they had to come over to a table where there was a box. That particular box is actually a little toolbox that did come from the dollar store. And there was a keypad on the table, and they needed to convert the word Misa into numbers. So 6472 was the clue that they needed to unlock the lock. You can see that lock is on the table there. And inside the box were UV lights that I got from Amazon. The lock is actually also from Amazon, that they were going to use to solve puzzles later. So that was the physical lock that was included in the puzzle, in the breakout. So one of the activities they had to do was about the tradition of eating 12 grapes at midnight on New Year's Eve. I actually purchased the presentation that I used from Teachers Pay Teachers. I added into it a slide that told them to complete this Google form while they were reading the information. And I just made a Google form that asked them questions they're reading in the target language and then answering these questions about what they've read. If they answer all of the questions correctly, I set the submission message when you submit the form to give them the clue suerte, which was the 6-letter word lock. So then they can take that clue and go to the Google form where the locks are and enter that, and that should unlock the lock for them. I underlined it for you all. It was not underlined for them, so they had to read that and figure out that suerte was the clue. Another activity was just about the idea that if you take your suitcase around the block, you'll be able to travel in the new year. And so they had to read this, figure out that viajar was the word that they were looking for. At the bottom of the diagram, it has the, I gave them again the Spanish words for each of the directions, and they needed to figure out which suitcases they were going to use. That was their directional pattern they should have come up with. And so then they will take that to the Google form. You can see that I gave them on that form the code for how to enter the directional words that they had come up with, and that was another lock on the form. They had a 2-page reading that was linked into the website, so they were going to read that online. It was attached to the form. I'm sorry, to the site, and they were going to read that. And then as they were reading that, they did an activity on paper where they were going to fill in words based on what they had read. And the little boxes that are shaded, they needed to use those letters when they were done to unscramble them to find 2 words. There's a little clue at the bottom to sort of help them figure it out. And so then those 2 words were going to be the solution to the 2-word lock that was on the form. They read another little thing about the bread that's eaten on Three Kings Day and the figures that are hidden inside of it. And then in the classroom and in the hall, there were little pieces of brown construction paper with clip art of the bread on them. And behind some of them were little figures that had numbers written on them in invisible ink. The students needed to find all of the figures and use the UV lights to get the numbers off of them so they could put them in the correct color order. I didn't tell the students that they needed to use the UV lights on this. They needed to figure that out. So a lot of them found the figures and had all the colors. They were able to figure out the colors were important. But then they couldn't get the lock to work. And then they realized that they needed to put them in a specific order. So they had to go back and look for them again. And so that was the color lock that was on the form. They did a reading on El Día de los Inocentes. Linked into that document was a link to a Google Sheet. It forced them to make a copy of it because they needed to be able to type on their own copy. And they had to, based on what they read, determine if the statements were true or false. This sheet is set up so that if they type the right answer, it will change colors, so they'll know right away whether they got it right or wrong. And if they get all of them right, the 8-letter clue pops up at the bottom for them. And I create these sheets in Google Sheets using conditional formatting. My students actually really like to do these. I sometimes do them for them so they can have some discrete practice if they're learning new verb forms or new conjugations or new tenses or things like that. They really enjoy doing these sheets. It's kind of like a game for them to have it change colors, so they really get into it. But you create these by going to Format and Conditional Formatting. And then the Format menu will pop up for you. You want to select the cell in which you want the students to put their answer. So you're going to select that cell, and then text as exactly. Type in whatever it is you want the answer to be, and it can be more than one word, that's fine. Capitalization is not important for this, so if they do a lowercase f, it will still count it, but if they put in the wrong word, then it won't. There are some default colors that it will change, you can use to change it, but if you can use any color you want. If you go to the paint can, you can customize the color to which the cells will change when the answer is correct. And I find the easiest way to do this, if I'm doing multiple things on a sheet, is to then add another rule that will maintain some of your formatting. And so then you can just put in the cell and the new answer and keep going with that. And you don't have to go back to the text as exactly and rechange the color every time. So it makes it go a little bit faster if you are doing multiple things on a sheet. There was another little document that they read about the little figures that people put on your back on Dia de los Inocentes. And if you notice at the bottom of it, it asked them to find 7, but then it also asked them if they can control a document. That was a clue for them to hit Control A to know that Control A will highlight the page. And so if you have hidden text on a page, which is really just text that is the same color as the background of the page, it will become visible for them. And so it tells them to unscramble the hidden letters. So for this one, they did know that they were looking for letters, needed to use the UV lights to find the letters that were written with the invisible ink. And I changed the color of the page just because I think it just works better when it's not white. But you can do that. If you want to do it that way, just change the color of the page and make sure that you change the font to the same color that you've changed the page. Or if you want to leave it white, then just make sure you change the font so that it's white. And there was one more clue. Excuse me. Just about nativity scenes and when things are added to them. They just read that. And then in the hall, there was a little picture that asked them if they knew when they needed to add the baby, and they just had to put the correct date. They needed to do it in Spanish, so day and then month. And that was it for that. And if they were able to get all of their clues right, and they submitted their form, and they got the message that they did it and they had saved winter break. Because the form, by the way, is set up with response validation, you actually can't submit it until you get all of the answers correct. So if students aren't able to break out, they will not be able to submit the form. So that's just you should just know that, I guess, if you're going to do one of these. So I did this with my 3 8th grade classes. I had planned for it to take about an hour. I guess actually for most of them, it took a little bit longer than an hour, but I decided to extend the time period on that a little bit because I wanted them to get the content for this one. So I let them have a little bit more time. Sometimes finding the correct timing on a breakout can be a little tricky because sometimes things will take them a little bit longer than you think it's going to, or there's a puzzle that was trickier than you thought. But I thought this was a good one. There was lots of target language reading in it, so they got lots of comprehensible input while they were doing it. The students were engaged. They really liked to do these. They were excited and proud when they could get the puzzle correct and get the right answer to open the lock, so they were happy about that. Sometimes you will have students who get frustrated because they don't get it right the first time. They have to sort of come up with a new solution, and sometimes that throws them off, particularly students who very much just like to have a right answer for things. This can be a little challenging for them. But I find that if they can just push through the frustration and get over the not knowing exactly what the right answer is, they can still enjoy it. And usually once they kind of push through that, they can have some success, and then when they do solve a puzzle, they're really excited about it. But I think that the getting past the frustration and learning to overcome that and to keep pushing on is part of that learning of the grit and the persistence, and that's, you know, also a good thing for them to learn. And the discovery and the stumbling blocks are sort of part of the process of doing a breakout. If they're really struggling, I give them hints to lead them in the right direction, or ask them questions to sort of guide them to think about something that maybe they aren't thinking about, without giving them the answer. So they still have to, you know, solve the problem and come up with the answers on their own. So I had created a reflection to do after this breakout. I didn't get a chance to do it this year because because I let them have a little extra time. I didn't think we had time to do the reflection. We have 82-minute blocks, and since by the time I got them in and got them started and they had a little over an hour, I didn't think we had time to do the reflection. And we had missed so much school that I decided to just skip that for this year. But I did do a Jeopardy follow-up for this, because I wanted to sort of assess and see how much of the content they had actually learned and picked up. So I made this Jeopardy game using flippity.net, which is works with Google Sheets. And there was a weekend that passed between them doing the breakout and doing the reflection. But I'm sorry, doing the Jeopardy game. But we did teams of 4s, the way this Jeopardy program works. So the groups are pretty big. I have 32 to 35 students in each of these classes. So they were groups of like 8 or 9. But between them, they were actually able to come up with the answers to a lot of the questions, because different people remembered different things or remembered parts of things, and they were able to kind of put it together. But I thought it was a valuable follow-up because it gave us a chance to discuss some things or explain some things, or they could ask some questions if they weren't sure about something. So it was a nice way to sort of solidify what they had learned and sort of expand on things that maybe they needed some more information about. So at the end of it, I really thought that doing the breakout to introduce information was a valuable thing to do, and I intend to do more of it. Actually, I'm going to try to write one to introduce some content in a couple weeks. So it's for sure a new way that I will be using breakouts in the classroom. I think for some students, it might actually be a meaningful way to get their information, because they've interacted with it in a different manner than they might interact with it if they were just getting it presented to them in class. It's a nice alternative for just to have content presented. And it also teaches them the 21st century skills while they're learning content, so that's always a bonus. Breakouts can be time consuming to create, but I certainly think that they are worth the payoff for the students in just their interaction with each other and their engagement in the classroom and in the activities. So I think it is for sure a wonderful thing to incorporate into your classroom. And I think that's it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rosalynn. Do you want to turn on your camera? I'm going to prompt you. I realized your camera was turned off, but you had already started presenting, and it didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I want to see you. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I'll ask the questions to to Rosalynn. I have a meeting with Carolyn after. I have a couple questions. So And we talked about it a little bit this morning, and how this is the kind of activity you said where students who are usually maybe not super successful in the regular traditional classroom get a chance to shine.
Hmm.
Has this been your experience?
I have found that sometimes the students that maybe are not, your A+ students are the ones that come up with the options, or the, oh, maybe we should look at this, or, well, this thing over here is a different color, that must mean something. So sometimes it gives them a chance to sort of take the lead and show everyone else how to do something, and that's always a nice feature.
Mhm. So we were discussing the makerspace, as you know, on the discussion in the course this week, and
Hmm.
I think there were similar conversations about the idea of the makerspace let some students really shine. I think it's Stephen who actually shared some amazing student projects where they really did like amazing videos.
Hmm.
So that's definitely a benefit of this type of presentation or activity. Um, So you said not all the students break out, right?
Right.
Are they okay with that? I mean, we don't often have activities in the classroom where there are winners and there are losers, or at least not after investing a whole hour of their time.
Right. um they are okay with it. Some of my students have done it before, because some of their other teachers also do breakouts in, other content areas, or they've done one with me before. um but I tell them at the beginning that not everybody's going to break out, and that that's okay. One of the components of a breakout is usually at the end you take some pictures, and so there are we broke out signs, and then there are, oops, we didn't make it, or, not quite, or almost there kind of signs. And so they still get to sort of celebrate their failure. um, and so that's also, I think, kind of an important lesson for them.
Hmm. Yeah, not everybody always wins. A few questions here. How does so it's I don't know the last name of the presenter because it's a username, but the question is, how does a beginner begin doing these activities with their students? And somebody else below said or asked, is there a guide somewhere to get started with breakouts?
there there's the Breakout EDU website, and there's a digital Breakout EDU website. They used to be free, and over the past year they have become paid sites. So but I think there are still on both of them some things that you can access for free. um if you can get to a point where you can, sometimes, the first time I ever participated in a breakout, I was at a conference and did a physical breakout, and so that was my first introduction to breakouts. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I totally have to do this with my students. And so then I just sort of looked into it and started researching them. I have actually, all the breakouts that I've done, I have built myself. So it's just sort of been trial and error, and trying to, play with things and come up with ways to make things into puzzles and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there is a guide so much out there. I'm not actually sure about that.
So I think the breakout site itself, I think, explains the concept quite well.
Yes. Hmm.
And then on the site, there are some simple activities.
Hmm.
Um,
There are some websites out there, and if you just sort of Google breakouts, there are some websites that do have um, that other people have made, that have some tips about how to create things and how to use, sites for other to create the puzzles and things like that. So if you do some research, you can find some information about that.
So teachers pay teachers, the TPT site might have some breakouts. I didn't look.
They There are some physical ones on there, I think. I don't know if there are digital ones on there or not. Um, but that might be a place to start.
Somebody is suggesting that you put yours and you sell them and you retire early. There you go.
That's a great plan.
We have another comment saying this was a great presentation. I didn't even know you could do this with Spanish. It's definitely something I will look for in the future.
Great.
I missed a question. Oh, so there's a question from Clara who asked, how do you manage this with students who already speak Spanish? I'm assuming heritage speakers, maybe?
We actually don't have a lot of heritage speakers at our school. I have one out of the um, with my with my eighth graders. I have 100 eighth graders and about 100 seventh graders. But with my eighth graders, I think I really only have one heritage speaker. But I think that they can still participate because even, I mean, for the breakout, the language isn't necessarily the thing that's going to trip you up on some of the puzzles.
And you can do them at any level. I think.
Yes, yes, you can. Yes, and if you had heritage speakers, you could certainly make it, you know, challenging for them.
Yeah, definitely. If you have a class of heritage speakers,
Right.
You can really do something a little bit more challenging. I mean,
Right.
Breakouts.
I mean, I have done breakouts in English that were challenging just because of the way the puzzles were put together. So, you know, you can adjust the challenge level to fit the language level.
I think it's the nature of the breakout or even the escape room to, you know, that they are challenging. I was reading that the average escape rate of escape rooms is around 30-40%. So it's definitely something that is meant to be challenging, and then you can really adjust how difficult the clues are. I realized yesterday that Pinterest, which is not a social network that I use very much for work, but Pinterest has a lot of resources on gamification, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were some breakout ideas.
There are some breakout Pinterest boards, yes.
That's one place. And then, you know, reaching out on Twitter or to your personal learning network. Actually, at the beginning of the presentation, I showed all the webinar, and we offered a webinar on a digital breakout last year as well. So that's another resource. Good point. Kimberly reminds us there are some breakouts on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to say it. Some breakout groups on Facebook. There is a French breakout. There's a Spanish breakout, and they have a lot of members, so they're probably active groups.
And I don't know if they have them for other languages or not.
No, they didn't last year. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't remember. I also didn't look. But again, like if you're teaching, you know, I don't know, Italian or Japanese, then you have your connections within your personal learning network, and you can find out. And if there is no group, you can create your own.
That's right.